change. Clients arrived inexplicably, debts paid themselves, and my business thrived like never before. But at night I felt a presence. Something was watching me in the dark, and the sound of claws scraping the walls began to be my new nightmare. What had I really unleashed? With each passing day, my business grew in ways that seemed impossible. Clients arrived without promotion, and the juiciest contracts fell into my hands, as if destiny itself placed them there. But at the same time, something dark began to weave around me. At night I felt I was not alone. The first time I noticed it was when I was closing the store. I had turned off all the lights and secured the doors, but as I walked to my car, I saw a long shadow projected against the wall of the building. The problem was there was no one there. I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart racing. I took a deep breath and kept walking, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But as I got in the car, I noticed something strange in the rearview mirror. Someone was sitting in the back seat. I immediately turned around, but there was no one. The air inside the vehicle was heavy, as if someone had just exhaled a puff of smoke. I didn't dare look at the rearview mirror again on the way home. That same night, the noises began. It was as if something was scratching the walls of my room. At first, I thought it was mice, but the sound was too intense, as if someone was marking the walls with claws. I got up, checked every corner, but found nothing. When I returned to bed, the lights began to flicker. That's when I saw something, a tall, dark figure standing in the corner of my room. It had no face, but I knew it was watching me. "Don't forget the deal," whispered a voice that seemed to come from all directions at once. I froze, unable to move or scream. The figure vanished as quickly as it had appeared, but the silence it left behind was worse. From that night on, I couldn't sleep peacefully. The days went on, and although everything seemed to be going wonderfully with the business, my health began to torment me. I had recurring nightmares in which that figure appeared to remind me it was watching me. In one of those nightmares, I was signing the contract again, but this time, instead of my blood, I used the veins of my arms as ink. I woke up sweating, and then I noticed something on my desk. The contract I had signed with Don Emiliano was there. Although I had left it at the ranch, it now had a new line written in red letters: "Time is running out." I wanted to get rid of the paper, burn it or tear it up, but every time I tried to destroy it, it reappeared intact somewhere in my house. It seemed to mock me. One day, tired of living in fear, I decided to confront Don Emiliano. I went back to the ranch, but what I found was even more unsettling. The mansion was in ruins, as if it had been abandoned for decades. There were no signs of him or anyone, but on the ground, in the place where we had signed the contract, there were burnt marks in the shape of a pentagram. "I know you're here," I shouted. My voice echoed in the empty place, and the echo seemed to laugh at me. Then I heard it again, that deep, raspy voice I could never forget. "You're not satisfied with what you have anymore." The figure of flames appeared before me, filling the place with suffocating heat. "I fulfilled my part of the deal, but you still haven't fulfilled yours," it said. I felt my legs give out, unable to respond, and that thing just stayed there watching me. "Remember, you can't escape. Your soul no longer belongs to you." As I ran out of there, one thing became clear to me: this pact was not just a game of words. I had given up something more valuable than my life, and the price I would pay had only just begun to reveal itself. The days following my visit to the ranch became a living hell. It was no longer just the feeling of being watched or the noises at night. Now, things around me began to change in ways that defied explanation. One afternoon, while reviewing my business's financial statements, I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine. There was money in my bank account that I had never deposited. The amounts were impossible, as if someone had been feeding my success from the shadows. I tried to trace the transactions, but the records showed no origin. Only one name appeared on the documents: PACTS signature. I tried to convince myself it was a banking error, but I knew it wasn't. And the worst part was that my prosperity was not going unnoticed. Clients, employees, and even friends started looking at me with a mix of envy and suspicion. Some confronted me, asking what my secret was, and I could only respond with evasions. One night, after closing the business, I decided to review the security cameras. I had felt that something or someone was entering the store when I wasn't around. What I saw left me petrified. At 3:33 in the morning, all the lights in the store began to flicker. In the video, a long shadow could be seen moving between the shelves. It had no human shape. It was like black smoke floating with its own intentions. At one point, the shadow stopped in front of the camera, and although it had no face, its eyes burned like embers. Suddenly, the camera turned off. When it came back on, everything was as if nothing had happened. I slammed the laptop shut, feeling cold sweat run down my back. From that night on, the apparitions became more frequent, and things began to escalate. One early morning, I woke up feeling a weight on my chest as if someone were on top of me. I opened my eyes and there it was again, the dark figure of flames. "Time is running out," it murmured with a voice that seemed to drag fire. I couldn't move, not even breathe normally. I could only watch as that thing raised a hand and marked something on the ceiling of my room. When I finally managed to move, the figure had vanished, but the symbol remained, burned into the beams as if someone had branded it with a red-hot iron. It was the same symbol I saw on the ranch, a pentagram surrounded by words in a language I didn't recognize. The next morning I tried to seek help. I went to a local church and spoke to the priest, but when I mentioned the pact, his expression changed. He looked at me with a mixture of fear and pity. "That's not something that can be solved here," he said, making the sign of the cross. "What you've done binds you directly to your soul." I begged him to help me, but he refused. He even asked me to leave the church as if my presence could contaminate the place. Desperate, I searched online for similar cases. I found dark forums filled with stories from people claiming to have made similar pacts. Some spoke of ways to break them, but they all agreed on one thing: the price of betrayal was worse than death. That's when I decided to find the man who first spoke to me about Don Emiliano. His name was Raul, an old acquaintance who was always involved in shady dealings. I found him at a rundown bar, sitting alone in a corner, his face consumed by exhaustion. "Raul, I need you to tell me everything you know about that man," I said bluntly. Raul looked at me with glassy eyes and let out a bitter laugh. "He did you a favor, didn't he? Well, you're marked now, my friend. There's no turning back." "There has to be something," I yelled, grabbing him by the collar of his shirt. Raul remained silent for a moment before speaking in a low voice. "They say you can negotiate a second time, but the price will be worse. And if you try and fail, you won't live to regret it." That night, I returned home with more questions than answers, but as I sank into my bed, looking at the burned symbol on the ceiling, I knew I didn't have many options left. The clock was ticking and the flames were getting closer. That same night, as I tried to fall asleep, a sense of oppression filled me. I knew I wasn't alone in the room. The air felt thick, charged with something I couldn't see but clearly was there. I tried to ignore it, squeezing my eyes shut, but a dry sound, like the creaking of wood, forced me to open them. The door to my room was slightly ajar, and on the other side, I saw a dark figure slowly sliding toward me. It was the same being, the burning shadow. Its eyes, like glowing embers, shone in the darkness. "Did you think you could ignore me?" it said, its voice echoing in my head like an endless reverberation. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My muscles were paralyzed and all I could do was watch as that thing approached me. It reached a hand toward my face, and the air around me became unbearably hot. It felt like my skin was being burned from the inside out. Suddenly I woke up. Or at least I thought I did. I was sweating, gasping for air, with the feeling that something had just detached from my body. But when I looked around, the burned symbol was still there, on the ceiling, and in the corner of the room, ashes were scattered on the floor, forming the same marks I had seen at the ranch. I knew I couldn't keep going like this. I had to find a way out. I returned to the forums where I had read about the pacts. Among stories full of despair, I found a comment from someone claiming to have survived one. They said there was a way to renegotiate, but it was risky. According to the message, I had to return to the place where I made the original deal and summon that entity once more. There, I would have to offer something even more valuable than my soul. The idea terrified me, but I saw no other option. So that same night I drove to the ranch. The place was more deteriorated than the last time I was there, as if the very evil was slowly devouring it. Upon entering, the air smelled of sulfur, and the walls were covered in black stains. I lit a candle, as the instructions on the forum said, and drew a circle of salt on the ground. Then I spoke the words that I found written in one of the comments: "Tenebras ias pactum manifestate damnate flam marum." The silence that followed was deafening, as if the entire world had held its breath. Then the ground began to tremble, and flames emerged from the center of the circle. There it was again, the figure made of smoke and fire, staring at me with those glowing eyes. "You've returned," it said with a mocking smile. "I want to renegotiate," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The creature let out a laugh that made the walls of the ranch shake. "Renegotiate? Do you think you can play with me? The pact is clear. You asked and I granted. Now you must wait for the payment. There must be another way. I'm willing to offer something more." The creature leaned toward me, its face inches from mine. I could feel the heat of the flames burning my skin. "Very well, but the price will be high. If you want to change the deal, you'll have to offer me something you will never get back." "What is it?" I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. Your memories